movement for self-determination was formed in the year 2005 as a political movement at the time when negotiations about status of Kosovo started. These negotiations started with Serbia, and Kosovo was at that time under UNMIK administration. UNMIK meaning United Nations Mission in Kosovo. And we formed the dossier because we thought that self-determination is precisely what we are lacking in Kosovo. They were talking about deciding about status of Kosovo as if we do not have status, while we said it's not true that we don't have status. It is people of Kosovo who do not have freedom. And the political name of this freedom is self-determination. So we reactualized a very important concept of the 20th century. And at the same time, we problematized the fact that we were supposed to negotiate with Serbia, with a former occupier, for the status of our country. We said that it is not true that Kosovo is a problem in whose solution you should make Serbia a partner, but rather Kosovo has many problems, and one of those problems is Serbia as well. So our first slogan was no negotiations, self-determination, meaning no negotiations with Serbia, self-determination for people of Kosovo. We were very different from all political subjects because we were not a party. We wanted to be more than a party. We wanted to be a movement. But on the other hand, we were very different from the others, not conceptually and in our critique and stances, but at the same time in our methods. And I think that methods are very important in politics. We thought that we cannot be a proper political party because Kosovo is not a proper state with sovereignty and territorial integrity and so on. But at the same time, we cannot be a proper political party because we do not believe that representative democracy is enough. We think that representative democracy is necessary, but even more so, not sufficient. That's why we were aiming at different kind of democracy. Some people call it direct democracy, some people call it participatory democracy. But what we were doing is organizing protest demonstrations, roadblocks, petitions, and symbolic actions. In these actions, we damaged the property of the regime, but we never hurt anybody. So we deflated the tires of the UNMIK jeeps and our government, of EULEX. We smashed windows, and we entered into different kind of meetings of international bureaucrats and our local corrupted politicians, and put our slogans in front of them, and or we put there are some devices with a very bad smell that if you put in a room, nobody can stay there anymore for like 1 hour. So we did many things like this because we thought that society needs to be vibrant, and representative democracy is simply killing society. In the end, with representative democracy, you get citizens turned into public turned into spectators, and politicians becoming the richest people in the country. Representative democracy, when you vote once in 4 years for somebody, and then he chooses for you the next 3 years and 364 days, is not fair. It could be necessary, but it's, as I said, totally insufficient. So we thought that we need to revive the society. So for us that became very important. Of course, the youth, young people are most ready for something different, and at the same time, it is them who will live here another half a century, so they cannot wait. It is, that's why I think the majority of people who joined us were young. However, the average age in Kosovo is 24, so the majority are also young. 70% of the population are less than 30 years old. 1/3 of the population is less than 15 years old. So in a way, already those who are under 18 are deprived of democracy as such, and their number that's at least a quarter of the population in Kosovo. So the dossier did not limit itself to socio-political issues, but also to economic ones. Because recently a delegation from Egypt came to visit us, and they told me, what is your suggestion? They were from the upper room of Egypt now, after revolution there. What is your suggestion to us? I said, well, what is your suggestion to me? Because you did the revolution, we didn't do it yet. But in the end, I said one thing, economic sovereignty. Economic sovereignty is very important, because we have been told that economy has its own rules, it's free market now, and all what you have to do is not to intervene in order to have success. So, in a way, the best thing you can do is to do nothing. Just like back up from economic relations in a certain society and country, and then you just have to be a bit patient and you will get the best results. But of course, we think that both economy and sovereignty should get into, democracy and sovereignty should get into economy, because if not, you will lose all the three of them. That's why it is very important to make a political debate about economic relations. And we noticed this immediately, because in Kosovo we saw that we could choose products of capitalism, but not the type of capitalism, because there is not only one type of capitalism. You could choose the products that capitalism brings to you as a consumer, but you could not debate about the type of capitalism. So here UNMIK introduced neoliberal policies in the year 1999. They said to us, you have nothing, therefore you have to sell everything. And they started with this brutal, fast privatization. In order our football team to play somewhere abroad, they said that you cannot because you lack stars. But in order to privatize Kosovo, we didn't need stars. That was started immediately. And socially owned enterprises from the socialist era were transformed very abruptly into private-owned enterprises. But privatization did not bring liberalization. And at the same time, privatization did not make our factories more efficient, but turned them either into trade centers or into casinos. And today we have huge trade deficit. Export-import ratio in Kosovo is 1:11. The financial crisis of the year 2008 have shown definitely that, okay, services and finances are very important branches of economy, but production is even more so. As Martin Wolf in Financial Times wrote, in 2008, the year of financial crisis, half of the GDP of Germany was from the export. On the other hand, 41% of corporate profit of the United States in 2002 was from financial sector. So there has been some sort of overall enchantment with finances, but now we think that it's time to come up to domestic economies and to production. And this will not come from outside. Neoliberal model is a pessimistic model. It makes you think that somehow you will be saved by the global universal trends, and it will the salvation will come from outside, like NATO bombs here, who really saved us from Milosevic genocide. But it will not happen the second time. Development can be helped from outside, but it should be initiated from inside and carried out from inside. Whenever it fails, neoliberal proponents, they go for a cultural or geopolitical explanations. You do not have oil, they have oil, Or they say, for example, yes, but these people from the East are a bit lazy, and so on. They go with this kind of explanations, which blame objectively the country or subjectively the people, but they never question their economic model. So they never say that maybe their theory is wrong. There's nothing wrong with the people and with the country. So we started to read and discuss more about these issues, and we noticed that in Kosovo we have been fooled with two mathematical truths, allegedly. First mathematical truth was privatization. Sell everything very fast, very cheap, and then you wait for development, because it will come naturally as a consequence. And the second mathematical truth is infrastructure. Build nice highways everywhere in Kosovo, and from the airplane you will look better, because you see highways, and then you will get attractive for foreign investors. It didn't happen the first time, it is not happening the second time. We have some very expensive highways. Bechtel Enka, American-Turkish corporation, has built this highway which costed 1 billion euros, and it is 3 times more expensive than market prices. So, okay, they told us you need market economy, but at least let's have market prices. But our government, our corrupted government, did this deal with Bechtel Enka, where we are still paying money for this highway. Bechtel Enka came in the Balkans for 3 highways. One was built in Albania, the other in Kosovo. The third one, it seems neither Montenegro, nor Serbia, nor Macedonia wanted it. So they're going to build another one here. So new highway Pristina-Skopje in Macedonia, Bechtel Enka will build. Because they did a 5-year plan somewhere in the US that they must have these 3 highways. And now all this huge machinery, they don't want to send it back home without building the 3rd highway. UNMIK was replaced with EULEX, but not much changed. They both operate within this doctrine of short-term political stability. They call us a country which just came out from the war. But if you see their behavior, you see that they behave as if we are about to have a war, because they do everything in order to prevent explosion of another war, and not to develop country as if we are a post-conflict one. So there has been no development. Stability is their main concern, because they first want stability of the Western Balkans, which is a term for still not integrated country into EU. And then every country's stability is at the function of the stability of the Western Balkans. In Kosovo in particular, where all what they want is peace and security, but not freedom, democracy, and development. UNMIK has a 2,000 strong personnel, mainly policemen, judges, and prosecutors, who have executive powers over our institutions, and who at the same time have immunity from criminal prosecution here, together with their family members. So if any citizen of Kosovo runs out or has a car crash with some EULEX Jeep and dies in that accident, there's nothing you can do to an EULEX person. He simply can go back to his own country. UNMIK did that very often. And for example, ran over with a car over 2 children, and they were killed in Drenica here, and a drunk UNMIK policeman, and his country took him back the other day, and there is nothing you can do to him because they have immunity from criminal prosecution. And when internationals were asked, why do you need this immunity? They said, because without this immunity we will not come. Well, let's discuss about that maybe. Because we will not come without immunity, we need to come, so the only way is if we are provided with this diplomatic immunity, also their family members. Again, EULEX says that it's here for rule of law, but they are themselves above the law. And when they speak about the law, they speak about stability and security. They do not speak about rights of the citizens, justice for the people, and so We think that we need help from EU, but we need doctors and professors and experts on agriculture from Germany, France, Austria, Italy, UK, and all EU countries. It is better to help us with these kind of people to develop rather than policemen, prosecutors, to keep us quiet, to discipline our political elite by using the files of their corruption for political submissiveness and obedience. In Kosovo, there has been an unfair competition between rule of law and privatization, because both of these concepts are used against corruption and in the name of fighting corruption. So they say that we need rule of law in order to fight corruption, and they say at the same time that we need privatization in order to fight corruption. Because as long as we have a publicly owned enterprise, the management will be corrupted, and if you privatize it, then you will have the private incentive who will keep things in order and do a much better management. Okay, our answer to this is that if a certain company has a lot of corruption, instead of selling assets, let's buy new management. Why selling the assets? Why not buy new management? Because management is corrupt, not the workers. But in the name of corruption, they are selling our enterprises, and it's very interesting that there is no law on privatization in Kosovo. So privatization, which has been conducted throughout these years after the war, so it's like for 13 years, 14 years now, privatization never stopped, and it was never legal. And for my conviction, it was also criminal. On the other hand, rule of law has a generally good corpus of laws, but without implementation. So we have good laws which are not being implemented, and we have a privatization which is implemented very fast, but without law on it. So rule of law and privatization are two concepts in an unfair competition where privatization is winning. Poverty in Kosovo is widespread. Like 45% of people live with less than $2 per day, and another 18% are in extreme poverty. They live with less than $1 per day. So they are hungry on a daily basis, because with $1 per day you cannot get 2,100 calories, which are needed for a normal organism. Unemployment is over 50%, and it is much easier to lose your job than to find a new one. But the social peace that you see today in Kosovo is thanks to our diaspora. They bring €500 million at least every year. Our diaspora is mainly in Switzerland and Germany, and they send money to their families. With that money, we buy foreign products, and then you have this fragile social peace in Kosovo. Now, new negotiations with Serbia started. Our Prime Minister, I don't think that he would like to go to these negotiations, but he is a very rich man, and he is a politician by day, he is a businessman by night. So internationals, they have a very thick dossier for him, and that's why they push him into endless negotiations with Serbia. What Brussels wants is to take over Serbia from Russia. And I think that this is a very geostrategic goal of EU. Serbia owes its existence to Russia. 2 centuries ago, it wouldn't start as an autonomy without the help of Russia. So the conceiving and birth of Serbian state was a sort of a systematic concession of Ottoman Empire to Russia. Serbia was always in good links with Russia. Now EU wants to take Serbia from Russia because with inclusion of Bulgaria and Romania, EU has defined its own garden, its own yard, and somehow Serbia is like a Trojan horse in this garden. Element of Russia within EU soil. So they are desperate to take over Serbia from Russia. Okay, that's fine with us, but it is not us, Kosovo and Albanians, who should pay the price for that. because Serbia says, okay, I might reorient myself from Moscow toward Brussels, but you must make me stronger in the Balkans. Give me north of Kosovo. So this is the deal that Serbia is trying to do with the Brussels. I use this like figure to compare all these things. Russia is like a sort of a big octopus after the fall of Soviet bloc. All the countries except Baltic states went under the influence of Putin. You know, from Belarus, Ukraine till there, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, even Kyrgyzia, Armenia, and so on. They are all like satellites of Russia, like a big octopus. Serbia in the Balkans is like a small octopus. Belgrade with Republika Srpska in Bosnia, 30% of the population in Montenegro who declare themselves Serbs because they were against the independence of Montenegro. Northern part of Kosovo and enclaves with parallel structures. Serbian Orthodox Church all over, including Macedonia, because Macedonia, in order not to be pro-Bulgarian, is becoming more pro-Serbian. So in a way, there is this big octopus and small octopus. Brussels wants to separate small octopus from the mother octopus. But the small octopus says, okay, I can distance myself from the mother, but you must make my tentacles stronger. So I could, you know, keep on my own. So this is a bit like a figure of geopolitical relations in this part of the Balkans. We think that if Brussels wants to take over Serbia from Russian hands, then it is Brussels who should pay the price, not us. Serbia is really demanding something from us, but we think that if our Prime Minister continues to give so many concessions to Serbia, and if Brussels is so soft toward Belgrade, Kosovo will become a small Bosnia. Because there is a great danger that Republika Srpska light, some sort of Republika Srpska light, will emerge in the north of Kosovo, a sort of cantonization which leads to federalization. It is not true that Serbia wants partition of Kosovo, because paradoxically, even partition is a solution. And for Serbia, solution is the problem. They want to render Kosovo dysfunctional, and they use the same model as Milosevic toward Bosnia. Milosevic recognized Bosnia outside Serbia, when President of Bosnia, Alija Izetbegovic, recognized Serbia inside Bosnia in the form of Republika Srpska. So once I am also there, I let you out from me. So this is the model that Belgrade used with Bosnia. They tried to replicate it the same with Kosovo, and no wonder, because in Serbia today Prime Minister is the spokesperson of Milosevic's party, Ivica Dačić, allegedly Serbian Socialist Party. He calls himself socialist, but there is not much of socialism really. And he was spokesperson for 8 years, before the war, during the war, and after the war. And the president of Serbia is Tomislav Nikolic, whose boss is Šešelj. Šešelj is in Hague now, facing Hague Tribunal. So in a way, deputy of Šešelj and spokesperson of Milosevic are in coalition in Belgrade in power. Our prime minister, Thaci, is negotiating with Dačić for internal issues of Kosovo without any preconditions for Serbia. Serbia did not apologize for the crimes of the past, did not show any regret for that. According to Council of Europe, 119,855 houses in Kosovo have been destroyed or burned down. Thousands of women were raped. 12,000 people were killed, civilians. 860,000 Albanians were deported outside Kosovo in 1999, and over 1 million were expelled from their homes. There are still 1,700 missing persons, and for all this, Serbia shows no penitence, no regret, no apology, and they did not pay a single euro for all the damages they did here. For example, half of the tractors were destroyed. So they destroyed also agriculture. And cows and sheep were taken for the army, Serbian army here during the war. At that time, 5,000 people were taken from Serbia as hostages. 3,000 are still missing, but we get in small installments the bodies of the missing persons. Not anymore, not in the last 2-3 years, but earlier on. And around 2,000 were war prisoners. I was in Serbia in prison 2 years and 7 months. We were 2,000 war prisoners there. When we were transferred to Serbia, we were transferred in buses, in red buses, in between long convoy of Yugoslav army. So NATO would not bomb them, because NATO would see that there are these red buses in between. So they, in a way, they used us as a human shield for their withdrawal from Kosovo. Only in Pavilion 4, where I was in Lipjan, which is 17 kilometers far away from Pristina, I was in prison there during NATO bombardments. In this Pavilion 4, 4 people died. I saw them die, 4 people, from torture, not from guns. Because many paramilitary forces and guards there were torturing all of the prisoners, including me. And 4 who were older people or who had some health problem with stomach or heart, they died. And one of them is still missing today. There were terrible crimes happening here, and it is exactly these people who are in power now. And I think that Brussels is rushing now at the anniversary of Elysee Treaty to have a sort of a deal between Kosovo and Serbia, as if Hashim Thaci is Konrad Adenauer, Charles de Gaulle, and Ivica Dacic is Konrad Adenauer. But this is so false. You know, I think Lady Ashton is desperate to show that you know, foreign policy of EU is so effective. You know, that they can bring about something, because obviously EU cannot focus or engage properly in Syria, Libya, and all these crises of the world without first showing herself in its own yard. Like, first they want to make this deal between Serbia and Kosovo, and later on to continue with other crises in the world where they could show themselves as a superpower. Maybe we can talk a bit later this through question and answer session, because it's my impression that, you know, everybody now counts on this multipolar world. We take for granted the theory, the thesis, not much of theory there, of Farid Zakaria, this guy at CNN and Newsweek. You maybe have read or listened to him. He says that the world was bipolar from 45 to 89. Then it became unipolar, now it will become multipolar. Like many empires in the world in the 21st century. And EU must take its own place there. But for this, they want to do it very fast and not much relying on any kind of principles and on any kind of, criteria and standards. As soon as possible to consolidate EU politically so it could project itself outside. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not against EU. I want Kosovo to become member of EU one day. Sooner better, but it's not going to happen in this decade. However, I think it's very important also to EU become more social, more just, and to see itself more in terms of its people than in terms of its, finances and corporations and powerful leaders. So some sort of EU which will come from below, not only EU at the Lisbon Treaty level, which is a sort of a failed constitution. Like, I think this is very important. There is this, if you have time to check, there is an interesting debate between Jürgen Habermas and Etienne Balibar about, the website is Social Europe, I think, called, and it's a very interesting debate, and my stance is, of course, closer to Balibar, who says that for new EU, for new Europe, we need a new movement. It cannot be done in the offices of Brussels that easy anymore. And it should imply social, economic, and political aspect, and not only finances, bailouts, seeing troublemakers everywhere, and what they like to call crisis management. 3 or 4 years ago, some students from University of Constance, Germany, came to visit us, and I see in their master program was written conflict management. And I asked them, what happened to the word resolution? It was such a nice word, conflict resolution. Why conflict management all of a sudden? Why you bring this corporate language now here? As if conflict has to be managed, not to be eliminated altogether, just to be managed. But managing the conflict nurtures the conflict. Management is not about annihilation. Management is about cultivation. And our movement to represent it also in this other aspect. We are more of, let's say, modernist than postmodernist. We think that, of course, we recognize differences, but we think universality is even more important. Of course, we are pro-diversity, but we think solidarity is even more important. Of course, we are pro-tolerance, but we think cooperation is even more important. Because what international community did in Kosovo, with this concept of multi-ethnicity, one billboard of K4 is written on it, be tolerant. And this billboard is in Gračanica, which is mainly inhabited with Serbs. It is 3-4 kilometers far away from Pristina. You know what this billboard means, be tolerant? That means we agree with you, Serbs, that Albanians are bad people, but please tolerate them. The same billboard is in Pristina, be tolerant. That means we agree with you, Albanians, that Serbs are bad people, but please tolerate them. In a way, tolerance serves as isolation. If somebody from you tells me, you have been speaking too long, I tolerate you, that means that I actually should not be tolerating you, and you should be thankful to me that I'm tolerating you. So that's what the meaning of tolerance is. We don't like tolerance, we like cooperation. Of course, we come from different nations and so on. But should we, like many of you have sweaters. My sweater is gray, yours is blue. Should we emphasize that we have different colors, or that we need a sweater because it's winter now? Should we start and emphasize from the difference or from what is in common among people? So we are more for universality and solidarity rather than difference and diversity. So we think that this approach that our movement has is the right one, combined with direct action. We are also in the parliament. I'm a member of the parliament. I have a very nice office there, but I go there only 1 hour per month to open the windows. I like to stay in the movement here in the organization because I chair the Committee of Foreign Affairs. We are the third political party. However, our work in institutions is supposed to help our organization and propagate our concept and not to be a thing in itself. We think that representation implies a certain level of alienation. So we try that this gap between the society, citizens and organizations and political representatives to bridge it with our, let's say, both participatory and direct democracy methods. Many people asked us, how are you going to make sure that when you go into institutions, you're not going to become like them? I think it's always an open question. You can always fail. You have to be careful. When you are part of a movement which wants socio-economic and political transformations, you have to be careful. You cannot win for a little bit, but you can always lose for a little bit. And there are 3 tests of truth to the activists of our movement. First one is that we must have coherence of our discourse. We say the same things in public meetings, on TV, among ourselves, in the parliament, and in demonstrations, and so on. Second is that our MP must participate in protests and demonstrations. You cannot say that now I am an MP, I am somebody, I cannot go now there and face the police and so on, because now I'm not an ordinary citizen. This kind of symbolic capital, this self-appreciation that people have when they get positions is very dangerous. And the third one, which is, I believe, the most important, you must remain middle class. You should not get richer from politics. I don't have a car, I don't have an apartment, I rent an apartment. And 2/3 of my salary goes to organization. I keep only 1/3 of my salary. This is very important. I'm not saying that people who deal with politics should be very poor and probably barely have bread and milk at home. No, because then it's difficult to function. It's difficult to act. But if you are middle class, let's say, then in politics you should by all means remain middle class. If you love money so much, get out from politics and from where you're supposed to represent general interest and public and go into business and try your luck, as some say. If you want to be in politics, never get rich. And we try with our activists that it's actually preferable to get poorer by doing politics. This is the best. If you are in politics and meanwhile you get a bit poorer. Okay, not very poor, because you don't have time and energy and nerves to do anything else but fight for existence. But it is important to get a bit poorer. And especially, by all means, not to get richer. Because I don't think that people who have 1 million euros can represent people who have 10 euros. I think that they might speak both English, but they're not going to understand each other. They might be both Albanians, or both Serbs, or both Austrians, but they're not going to understand each other. Those who have 1 million euro and 10 euro, they speak the same language, but they are deaf to each other. So that's why I think that material basis is also very important. Classes are very important, and somewhere this is more clear, somewhere this is less. But through these 3, let's say, tests of truth, we try to remain authentic as a political movement. Okay, I will not take much more of your time. Maybe now we can start some questions or comments that you have. And here are basically different actions that we did throughout these 7 years of our existence.
The nationalist left, and it's absolutely amazing and really interesting that this still exists in ex-Yugoslavia. I'm quite curious what your political orientation is. Are you come out of a syndicalist or left Leninist orientation in terms of students of the left? And just to follow up on that, don't you think the kind of radical, well, certainly radical, plausibly, well, radically...
One of the slides there about the post and telecommunications, which seems to be the next issue coming up, so maybe if you could just say a word on that. And then the other question I had is about your vision of self-determination. Is it limited to Kosovo itself, or where do you stand on the greater Albania discourse?
With the February demonstrations in 2007, were there any consequences for the unmanned police officers? And what did the Kosovo authorities say? Did they try to go to the families and lodge complaints? Was there any possibility? The second question is, you openly criticized Mr. Taci. Have you ever been threatened or pressured not to be so openly criticized? Do you fear any consequences? And the third question is, you said we want to have cooperation, but with some of your demonstrations, you said we smashed windows, we damaged some cars. It's kind of a bit of a violent version of protest. How does it function with cooperation and violent protest?
I think nation is too valuable to leave it to the right wing. It is so stupid to say that nation is right wing and to leave it right wing. I think it's stupid. And I think this is a great mistake of the left in many European countries, that they think that nation is left. Maybe you just left the nation. Nation is too valuable to be left to the right wing. Nation means community, solidarity, and so on, common social bonds. But you should not overdo it. It's a dangerous thing. You should not have an excessive engagement, and especially you should be very careful not to fall into hegemonic reactionary waters with nation. So I think that nation is a socio-historical formation of modernity, and at the same time I will explain now briefly two streams of identification, if one could reduce it to this. Not identity, because I don't like identity politics, but of identification. First stream says like this. For example, I am first a human being, and then I become Albanian. That means that, when I'm born like a baby, it's just like this reddish, crying, small creature, and this like, this universal plane of immanence, this ocean of babies in maternity, being fascinated with that, like kind of, but some people who are somehow, I don't know how, it's not much time to explain this, but almost fundamentalists of human rights, universal plane of immanence of where we're all the same, all equal and so on. Not the same. And then when I grow up, I become Albanian. But paradoxically, this concept is self-subversive. Because this shows as if being Albanian is of a higher order than being a human being. Because I am a baby, and then I cannot have too much respect for baby, And then when they grow up, they become a human being, they become Albanian. As if this becoming Albanian is of a higher order. I don't think that this is really it. On the other hand, the other stream is the opposite. First of all, I'm Albanian, and then I become a human being. And I like this second more, I must say. That means that both of my parents were Albanian. I was born here in Kosovo. My mother was feeding me. I had no chance. I was already Albanian. Even as a baby, I was already Albanian. If you're born in Germany or in France and so on, and you live in that country, you enter the symbolic order of French language or German language and so on. You get inside that, in this matrix of tradition, ceremonies and so on. You're already French, you're already Austrian, you're already Albanian, you're already Serbian. There's nothing to do about it. But then when I grew up, I read a bit of Albanian literature, but then I wanted to read James Joyce. Then I was interested about Marcel Proust. Then I said, well, this has not been translated into Albanian. And I learned Serbo-Croatian, and I learned English. I became human being out of insufficiency of being Albanian. So, I am prior to everything Albanian, but not above everything. I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but so in a way, I am Albanian, first of all, but not above all. I became human being out of insufficiency of being Albanian. And I think that I belong more, let's say, in this identification, nationalist, and so on. PTK, yes, I'm fine with the word radical. Yes, I think, yeah, I take it as a compliment. I think it's fine. Yeah. Because, I think radical comes from Latin word which means roots, right? like going directly to the roots of the problem, not being diluted with the surface and so on. So it's a bit platonic, but it's okay. In this level, it's okay. About PTK, Post and Telecom of Kosovo is the most profitable enterprise in Kosovo. We get a dividend of 70 to 80 million euros per year from PTK. Management is corrupted. But let's get rid of the management, not of PTK. PTK is like a chicken, like a ham, which lays golden eggs. In the worst case scenario, let's sell the golden eggs. Why sell the chicken? And they are selling the PTK. Why? Because our ministers and our prime minister will get rich by selling. Some of the companies of former US diplomats are very interested in buying PTK. James Perdue, special envoy of US to the Balkans. Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, US Secretary of State. And her company withdrew from the competition, and that's very good. We, as a movement, we invited all people of Kosovo to write a letter to all the corporations who were competing by saying, please don't buy our PTK. Our government is so corrupted and is selling things very cheap. So please don't buy them. Don't misuse the situation where we are so corrupt. We wrote a nice letter to all the different corporations. And then I was in Brussels or in Paris at that time. I didn't write it myself. But then US ambassador here went on TV and said that Albin Kurtin is writing threatening letters to Madeleine Albright. Why don't they publish that letter? There is no such letter. So we have, in a way, a formal king in Kosovo. Used to be Peter Faith, now is EU Lex and Samuel Zboga, the special representative of EU in Kosovo. And we have the informal king, which is the American ambassador. And his or her office is in Dragodan, Arboria, in a hill here. And we call it like, you know, Zeus in the Olymp. And all our politicians, they go there and they talk bad about each other to him or her. And, you know, it's so sad that Kissinger was right. You know, he said, do you know, he met with some Latin America president when he was Secretary of State, and while talking with him said, do you know why the US is the most democratic country in the world? And he said, no, I don't know. No, actually he started to say about the principles and founding fathers and the, you know, constitution and liberty and so on, the values of, you know, Jefferson and so on. And I said, no, it's not true. US is the most democratic country in the world because it doesn't have a US embassy. It is the only country in the world which doesn't have a US embassy. That's why it's the most democratic. So, unfortunately, Kissinger was right in Kosovo. And I think that pushing for privatization, it was very much USAID and US embassy. The policy of our Prime Minister is such a simple policy that it's not a policy anymore. It's like, what Europeans want, dialogue with Serbia, give them that. What Americans want, privatization, give them that, I stay in power. Whoever wants big power or something, give them that. And that's how you are being tolerated for your corruption. When they privatize PTK, they are going to sell this mobile, they are going to sell, because PTKs consist of three components. Is this physical mail, is landline, and is mobile. They are going to sell landline and mobile because they are profitable. The one which is not profitable is this mail. They are going to leave it to the government. So privatization in Kosovo is privatization of the profit, nationalization of the losses. All the losses will be kept by our government. I hope that what we do with the concept of self-determination could help others as well. I do not think that Kosovo is a sui generis case. Because very often they have been telling us, oh, Kosovo is a special, unique case, we must treat it very specially. you know. But this is preparation for experimenting. Because whenever somebody defines you as a sui generis case, that means that books, we cannot learn anything from the books about you. History teaches us nothing, let's experiment with you. Because you are sui generis. Learning by doing, they call it. So that's, I think that Kosovo is a very classical kind of aggression, occupation, apartheid, discrimination, especially in the 90s, and attempt for genocide. And Article 1.3 of Kosovo does not allow Kosovo to join another country. Article 1.3 says that Kosovo should not join another country. So we do not have the external aspect of the right to self-determination. And we would like in our constitution to remove this article, 1.3. Internal aspect of self-determination, due to international community, which has executive powers, is hampered. The same goes for external aspect of self-determination. We cannot join another country. We would like to have this right, and then people use this right. If people vote no for joining Albania, I will continue to live here. But the fact that we are not allowed to referendum is terrible. We think that we should have the right to referendum. We never had referendum during the 90s. Sorry, after the war, only during the 90s. Paradoxically, under occupation, we had referendum. Milosevic was here with all the daily terror, and we had referendum. But now, when we got free, we cannot have referendum. And I think that more and more we are moving toward a world where a referendum is not allowed. Somehow, like in Greece, where Brussels made a lot of pressure not to have referendum. Now the question comes, where does this Article 1.3 come? My impression is that it comes from Austrian constitution. To prevent Anschluss with Germany, you know, is it Article 4, I think, which does not allow Austria to join Germany. But it is not us who had Hitler. Serbia had Milosevic. Why putting this condition on us? Why don't put it on Serbia? We didn't fight with Croats, we didn't fight with Slovenes, we didn't fight with Bosniaks. All of us fought with Serbia. So why now this Article 1.3 here? As if we are Austria. So, you know, they have reversed this this situation. Because some of the European diplomats told me once that, oh, now it's like EU after the Second World War. You know, now new peace. Germany finally gave up from Alsace and Lorraine. France and Germany have no territorial disputes anymore, and so on. My impression is that it's like more like after First World War than after Second World War, because they are so much frightened from Versailles Conference. They think that let's not push Serbia, let's not pressure Serbia too hard, because Serbia might produce Hitler. So Hitler was not Milosevic. Hitler could be Dacic if we pressure Serbia too hard, just as we pressured Germany in Versailles Conference. So in a way, let's not pressure too much Serbia so it doesn't backfire with Hitler. This is like the fear in EU regarding Serbia. There were, you know, every time when they do a protest, few dozens of our activists are injured, and then you have, always they say 10 policemen are injured, always in the news, and they never show those policemen. And on 10th of February, of course, there was no injuries of the policemen. And our politicians, they all condemned me and Vjenës. They said Albin, Kurtin and Vjenës, self-determination, did this protest. And then Robert Dean, on me, prosecutor, said that the deaths of 10th of February 2007 were avoidable and unnecessary. But the Romanian policemen, which left the country, they took their rifles with them, and they did not allow them Romania did not allow them to be interviewed as suspects, only as witnesses. And they left the country within a week. They went back home to Romania, and we cannot do anything to them. Now, even more so that Romania does not recognize the Republic of Kosovo. So, no, I have not been threatened by Thalci because of this, Vjenës and these actions, because, you know, they threaten you if they think that you could be afraid. You know. If they feel that, you know, they could make you fear and change your mind, but then they give up. What is my concern is that many of our activists are being threatened, and especially in our branches, not in Pristina here, but in our branches. And that's very difficult because few activists have been expelled from their jobs because they belong to our movement. We do not think that deflating tires, breaking some windows, we do not think that's violence. I must confess now. We think that's force. We rely on a definition of Michel Foucault. He says that you can use violence toward a subject that can offer resistance. I cannot be violent toward this table. I can be violent toward another person. But toward this table and this projector and this, that's not violent. Police are violent toward the demonstrators because we can offer resistance. Or demonstrators can be violent toward police because police can offer resistance. But toward objects you cannot be. But you must make sure that you do not injure people. And I think that when you fight a certain undemocratic regime, damaging property, I wouldn't problematize that. I didn't say that EU doesn't have principles. I fully agree with you. There are so many rules, so many criteria, so many laws. It's like, but EU here, EU inside Europe, outside itself is not that principle. EU in Kosovo is not principle. So that was my point. In a way, EU mission in Kosovo goes against values of EU. Because it's like, I think here they are imitating a bit American foreign policy, which is one thing outside of itself and another thing inside. If you go to US, you can find a lot of democracy. But outside where you have US administration or US army, not much of the values of New York and Washington. So I think that this is such a sad thing if EU tries to replicate the same. The key ideologist, because it might be interesting for your university as well, the key ideologists of EU enlargement process, I believe, are Carl Bildt and Robert Cooper. One other thing why I think that Albanian identity, now in sui generis sense, is a bit important, because we have three religions. Albanians are Muslim, Catholic, and Orthodox. So we have three religions in our nation. So in a way, national identity has been nationalism has been emancipatory in the 20th century for Albanians because it emancipated us from religion. If you remove the national identity, then three different religious identities come, which is, I believe, not good. First. Second, it had been emancipatory toward feudalism, all this provincialism, you know, like we came out 200 years ago from different tribes, and it was a leap forward to a nation. Ernest Gellner says that industrialization and education are very important for national cohesion because they ensure mobility of people. And the third one is toward neoliberalism, because some of the people come to the protest against privatization not because they like public property, but because they consider it a national resource. Let's not sell it. It's our nation. So they should participate in the protest. In these three has been important. It's very difficult to answer now to your question, I must say. But I would just point to one author, Frederick Jameson, if you so okay. So there we are. So he has a very good book. This is a bit thick now. It's a postmodernism or
The cultural
cultural logic application. So that's a very good book. And this referendum for the north. In the southern Serbia, you have also a lot of Albanians. But I think that if you try to do a referendum where the unit would be a village, that is a recipe for another war, toward another war. It's a receipt for another war. You cannot have a perfect national border. You cannot have it. And when a border goes throughout in the middle of the town, that's a solution for eternal problem. Because when a border goes through mountains, it could be sustainable. If a border goes in the middle, at the heart of a town, then you have another Nicosia, Jerusalem, Belfast, and Mostar, and so on. It won't function. So I think it's very important to stick to these borders of Kosovo, which has been recognized by around 100 countries, rather than try to draw now a village by village border, are you Albanian or are you Serb? Because if you start to do that, then nobody would like to be at the wrong side of the border, and you will have immediately new war and new bloodshed. So I don't think that the borders of Kosovo should now be changed. Resolution 1244. There is Russia and China who consider Kosovo's independence to be, at some extent, American project. So they say that by being against Kosovo, they are against US. And you know, when US came to France, US army came to France to liberate and help French people liberate themselves in the year 1945, I think. In the day D, 6,000 American soldiers died. For Kosovo's independence, not even 6 soldiers died. Way less than that. And here they portray us as if US liberated us. It was Kosovo Liberation Army, yes, NATO, which came afterwards. And, but we are not an American project. Okay, in certain aspects, due to our Prime Minister, our issue has been hijacked as an American issue. But there is some nativeness and authenticity of our struggles here for liberation. And Resolution 1244 cannot be changed without having Russia and China on our side. And due to their adversary stance with US, that's not likely to happen in the near future.